Welcome to another edition of the Heron Outlet. She is Alex Winley. I am Ian Hest, and Alex, there's a new boss in town. Inter Miami making the announcement that Tata Martino will be the next head coach for Inter Miami, a press conference that actually just happened. We're returning back from it. So fresh off of that, Tata returns to MLS where he coached Atlanta United and Joseph Martinez while he was there, oddly enough. Also a reunion with both Lionel Messi and Sergio Busquets, who both played under him in Barcelona in 2013-14. And for Messi, a second stint with the Argentinian national team. So a lot of history there and a lot to get to with Tata's announcement. He did it with Chief Sporting Officer and Club Technical Director, Sporting Director, Chris Henderson, just a minute ago. A lot of interesting nuggets from there. But I wanted to start with the initial questions that were asked of Tata. You listened in. I was there as well. So what did you make of his introductory press conference? I thought it was very revealing. He was obviously very candid and kind of, I thought, very amenable, very, very comfortable in his skin there to a crowd that we haven't seen at many Inter Miami press conferences. I think that this is sort of the new normal that you and I are going to encounter. But a room packed full of people on a Thursday morning. I joked that, I've never seen that before. Sometimes it's just a couple of us. Well, I guess now that'll be a little different. But with Tata coming in, what did you make of his initial comments and what he might bring to the table here for Inter Miami?
Yeah, like you said, Ian, he was very realistic. I think he even said as much that this is going to be a rebuilding year for them. Looking at Inter Miami in its current state pre-Messi and Busquets, they're not the most cohesive team on the field. So Tata was super realistic about Miami's chances and how the rest of the season will go. I will say he did mention winning the U.S. Open Cup as an immediate goal for one, and the next goal was slowly climbing up the table to get to those playoff spots. So it was a good press conference. I wish most of it was translated, but the team doesn't do that for some reason. But the English questions that we did hear, they were pretty well spoken, and we got some good answers out of him and whatnot. So a very level-headed conference, and nothing too surprising. Obviously he talked about speaking with Messi and Busquets and how both of them are just ready to start playing for Miami. And I don't know if you mentioned, but Tata, they're still working on his visa, so he should be officially on the sidelines for maybe second week of July or first week, but
might be sooner than that. Yeah,
date, but they're pushing for it.
So Chris Henderson did say,
for it, and it was
Chris Henderson did say that they have filed the visa paperwork. They've done it in tandem, presumably. I found it interesting that Tata was there today because if he's not, in an official working capacity, that was a little interesting to me, but that's very minor technical stuff. He did say that he expects the visa process hopefully to be done within the next 5 to 6 days. So as we're recording here on Thursday, that's by Wednesday next week. So they do play Columbus on July 4th. So perhaps that might be Javi Morales' last game as the interim head coach. And then Tata will take over from there with those 2 games against, I believe, DC and St. Louis before they get ready for the Leagues Cup heading out in the end of July. What he did mention, let's just go through a couple of the things that he was talking about. He at one point was asked about, obviously Messi and Busquets. There's been talk about, I think that there might be some like PTSD trauma with this Miami team of what happened with Blaise Matuidi and some of the stars that have come in and whether they are ready to come into this environment. And he talked very, very directly about the fact that he had spoken with them and said this is not a vacation. He at another point in the conversation had said that what he finds so interesting about MLS is not only the introduction of a playoff format, but also the weather, the travel, the other exterior factors that don't really exist in other leagues that make it very difficult for a coach to manage players throughout the course of a season. And in this sprint to the finish that Miami will have basically in their last 12 games of the MLS season, he tried to sort of temper the expectations of those 12 games. Miami is bottom of the Eastern Conference right now in the MLS Eastern Conference. So it will be a tough step back for them to get into the playoff picture. But he did talk, like you had mentioned, about the U.S. Open Cup. The Leagues Cup will be a tremendous opportunity as well to start against some pretty good competition both in MLS and in Liga MX. So I think that that's a great starting point for him. But to mention that the work ethic needs to happen from day one, he had talked about how he wants to see this team look like his Atlanta teams of the past. I found that interesting, but it will take time, as he said, for him to get the personnel that he feels will be necessary for that. So expect more changes in the future. I think that we both thought that that was coming, but to make that team look like he wants it to is going to be a process, not just into the rest of this regular season. As he said, he has not taken over many teams midway through a season before in his career. So this is sort of a unique challenge for him, but also for him to be able to do it into the offseason, working with Henderson, working with Moss and Beckham, and what they're going to try and accomplish in the offseason to make this roster look more like what he's envisioning.
Yeah, and Miami fans, they need to be cautious. It's not going to be an overnight thing where they're suddenly going to get better. Yes, obviously Messi will help, but like Tata said, it's going to be a bit of a rebuild, and I'm glad that he knows what direction the club needs to go in, because as of right now they're not the best, and it's refreshing to see Tata be realistic. And us covering the team, I think we knew that it was going to take some time to dig themselves out of this hole. So, it's clear that the club and front office have a plan. Tata does. They're all on the same page, and it's just they have to wait until the July 5th transfer window to see a lot of these things come to shape. And then I believe. I don't know who said it. It was Chris Henderson or Tata who said, in August that should be, where the with injuries and maybe Gregory coming back, we saw that video. August would be the proper month to see get that full squad assessment and to see if they can climb up that table from being last in the East.
And it's going to take week by week. He said it's going to take time. That you cannot jump 9 points overnight. That's just simply not the case. And these 4 games before Messi and Busquets arrive are going to be important. Inter Miami needs to get maximum points or as many points as possible from these 4 games, with 2 at home especially, to be able to get back into this. I had asked Tata about the academy because one of my big questions, I guess, moving forward is going to be in that regard. Inter Miami has been, since the club's founding, if I take you back to 2019 at Adrian Arch Center, where David Beckham was talking about the need for a world-class academy and how he wanted to localize a lot of the talent that's here in South Florida. My question, I guess, in the coming years will be how close do they continue to follow that? Inter Miami has built one of, if not, one of the best, is without question, academies throughout MLS and throughout North America, to be frank, and up there with the likes of Philadelphia Union, who are consistently having players go abroad. New York Red Bulls is a very good academy. New England Revolution. Miami has the inherent advantage of having those guys in their backyard. We look to a guy like Schneider Borgelin, who is a South Florida guy, but went to Philadelphia's academy while Inter Miami was building theirs. Now Inter Miami has theirs again, and built up the way it is. So there is a lot more expectation that this academy can be one of the best, if not the best, in this hemisphere. You look to guys like Ben Hakremeshki, guys like Noah Allen, who have gone through this system, guys like David Ruiz as well, who are contributing first team minutes right now, and what that means to the squad and what it will mean, at least in the near future, for what this team is. I was curious to ask Tata about, with these big names coming in, doesn't get any bigger than Messi. Busquets is close behind. You're paying these guys huge, huge salaries. What does it mean for the academy, and what will be happening moving forward? And his answer was pretty simple. He said that he wants the academy, or at least the second team players with Inter Miami too, to be training right next to the first team players. There's both a pragmatic and a practical aspect to that. The pragmatic thing is you need bodies, right? In practice, you and I have gone through it before. If you're playing 11v11s, you want that second team to be able to facilitate. That can only help the Inter Miami 2 players to have to defend Lionel Messi on a regular basis. That's going to improve you as a central midfielder, for example, or central defender, for example. But also pragmatically, Tata talked a lot about the rules of MLS, which make it very difficult to get more than a couple of Lionel Messi and Sergio Busquets. There's not a lot that you're going to be able to do past that. And to be able to round out your roster with the homegrown guys that both come cheap come young with a chance to sell on in the future and reap the benefits of their future success in their careers, but also come with certain rules in the MLS collective bargaining agreement that make it advantageous to sign a guy like Drake Callender from your youth system or a Ben Kramashki, who I mentioned before. So I was excited to hear that he is not giving up, that Miami is not giving up on the academy aspect of this, because things have, you and I have seen them seemingly changed overnight with this club, even where it is currently, as they find themselves in the cellar of MLS. Things have changed a lot, but you're still maintaining that academy and that bottom up growth aspect that I think will be so uniquely beneficial to a club like Inter Miami.
Yeah, and even you mentioned Tyler Hall. He just got called up to the MLS next Pro All Star team. So that's another homegrown who's been doing so well for Miami. And I believe that there were a couple times that he was called up to the first team as a short term loan. So that's another one. But yeah, I think comparing Tata's time with Atlanta, they drafted Julian Gressel out of college, who was a youngster, and Tata was able to mold him into one of the best central midfielders slash wingbacks in the league. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what he does with the academy players now. Like you said, um, we have seen a lot of them come through with Ben Hakramaski, Noah Allen, Edison Escona, and David Ruiz play so well, and playing next to guys like Messi, Busquets, and now under an experienced head coach like Tata, it's going to be intriguing to see how much more they develop.
They will have a wonderful home crowd. Hopefully that starts this weekend with Austin FC. There was a lot of construction and activity going on around the stadium today as they get ready to expand those 3,000 to 3,200 seats that you and I reported last week about the additions that will come in the corners of the stadium to Inter Miami. Tickets did go on sale to the general public for the Cruz Azul game on July 21st. Many, us included, expect that to be Lionel Messi his first game in pink and black for Inter Miami. And I found it interesting that right after the press conference was when general admission sales or ticket sales went on sale for that game. They started, if I read it right, around $380, which is a lot more than what Miami had been selling for in the past. But let's talk about La Familia and the crowd and what Tata Martino, what Lionel Messi, what Sergio Busquets can expect. This will be a more intimate crowd than what they're expected in the past. Camp Nou is very different, right? Than Drive Pink Stadium. As they're trying to find their footing and as they're trying to get comfortable in Miami, what are some of the things that as La Familia is getting ready? We've seen the murals, we've seen the banners that are being discussed. Phil Neville was very big on, love him or hate him. He was very big on being very attentive to the fans and listening and being involved in it. What have you seen over the past couple of weeks about the preparation for this? What we might expect beginning? This will be the first home game since all of this has started for Inter Miami. They had the long break and then we're on the road. So as they return to Drive Pink Stadium and start to get this feeling left, I almost feel like these next two games are trial runs or test runs for late July. That these are going to be the warm up matches for what they're going to expect when Messi and Busquets and Tata arrive.
Yeah, you see the fans already getting prepped with the murals and banners and whatnot, and I think that's going to carry over as we head into July. Messi's debut is expected to be July 21st, so obviously La Familia, they're going to get prepped for that. Get ready, get their chants going. The Spanish only chants going, and try their best to just kind of create a great atmosphere for the incoming players, not just Messi and Busquets, but reports have said that they're going to bring in an extra 3 to 5 players to help complement them, and obviously Tata will have a say. So I'm really intrigued. Obviously they're expanding the stadium as well, and Miami are still in the U.S. Open Cup semifinal, so there is some silverware to root for. So yeah, it's just been a giant celebration, I guess, and everything has changed. Like Ian, you I went to the introductory press conference this morning, and going to the practice beforehand. There's gates up now, and beforehand we were able to maybe kind of just wander around and just see, take in the views. But now there are gates, and obviously places where you can't just wander around to now at the training facility. So yeah, they're getting prepped. The security's been upped, and obviously that campus up there has been kind of locked down a little bit more. So yeah, a lot of prep work, but there's still a couple weeks to go. So I'm intrigued to see how they speed run the construction process for the stadium. But yeah, as far as the fans go, they're hyped and they're ready, and hopefully they can make the stadium a hostile place to play for opposition teams, but a welcome place for the new players that are coming in.
That might be the understatement of the century, Alex. We'll digress here just for a sec because it is. I know
Yeah.
I've been joking about it a lot, but it is a little comical to see. I mean, you had to sign in and get a wristband this morning. You've never had to do that before, and it's just it's like a fortress now. Whereas before there was a couple there was a couple of us that regularly attend practice. There are a lot more of our friends that are joining us now. It is definitely interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there some questions are ones that hopefully from the larger standpoint we all get up to speed with. But yeah, it is definitely different to say the least with who is joining us now and where we're going and what we're doing and yeah, it'll take adjusting to for all of us. I think that this isn't anything that none of us have not dealt with before. Forgive my triple negatives there, but very similar stuff happened with LeBron and the Heat. We've been through
Yeah.
that in the media before as well. I think from a media standpoint, they have obviously so many requests from people now that's a little interesting. I'll be excited to see all of the content that comes out of this. We were talking before we started this show about a very interesting article in the Athletic that hopefully we'll get to later on in the show that just came out about how Inter Miami fixes where they are. I wanted to go back to though, forgive that little sidebar, but to go back to what you said about the a couple extra additions because Chris Henderson was asked about that. He didn't give as much of a direct number as you and I have heard. So perhaps
Yeah.
he's giving himself a little bit of a wiggle room there. But do expect some more
Hmm.
changes. The interesting thing that I did not hear, which might be more interesting than what I did hear, is that there wasn't any discussion about what to do with the designated player spots. He did not tip his hand at all about that. I think most of us
Yeah.
expect Gregory and Campana probably will be the other one bought down. But no mention of Roto outside of Tata. Tata talked about Roto playing in Liga MX and knowing him from the Mexican national team. But there was no mention of Rodolfo Pizarro from Chris Henderson, and there was no mention about how they're going to line up this roster to be able to make it compliant. So there are still questions regarding that. We've heard from many people saying that there is no subsidy, there are no special rules. You and I have both heard that there is absolutely no exception being made for Miami. Miami is following every single rule that is according to MLS. That's the word, but that comes with moves that have to supplement that ability, that process. And we still haven't heard what's going. I mean, the primary one is Rodolfo Pizarro, right? You have to figure
Yeah.
out what to do with Rodolfo Pizarro. It is a glaring outcast in this roster right now moving forward. And that to me is where whenever we're having a roster construction conversation, I almost feel like you and I are back in January and February where we were having the same conversation with Alejandro Pozuelo, where I was saying, and you were saying rightfully so, that nothing with Pozuelo can happen until you figure out what happened with Pizarro. Well, what happened with Pizarro was that he returned, so Pozuelo couldn't. Now, I have no idea how you make that third designated player happen without moving Rodolfo Pizarro. I have studied the cap. I have
Yeah.
read the entire CBA. I've followed MLS for 2 decades. I have no earthly idea how you possibly make a third designated player happen or even a high level TAM player happen without moving on from Rodolfo Pizarro.
I think honestly, I think with Henderson, he's like you said, he's kind of hiding his hand here. We've never gotten good quotes out of him. He's always been able to talk around the question. So I do think this is just them. laying low. I think that maybe there are potential suitors for Pizarro, and they're just keeping him low and to the side until either they can trade him to another MLS team or send him back to Liga MX. So I do think that's why you probably didn't hear Henderson explain into it a little bit more. I do think Pizarro has to get moved on. Busquets will be a DP per sources. Obviously Messi will be a DP, and then obviously they're probably looking to add on they do have that flexibility to use all three DP spots. If I think you buy down Campana, I don't know the explicit rules for that,
you
but
you
they do have
lose you
flexibility.
lose those extra slots. You lose those
Yeah,
three slots that so you and I were talking yesterday that what does that mean for an Emerson Rodriguez who's currently on loan in the
yes,
FAs? So you do if you are buying down Campana, you lose those three U22 initiative slots. That's basically the punishment that you get for that.
yeah, and I don't know if they'll do that if because I don't know that those three U22 spots can add extra bodies into the roster, and getting younger players around Messi and Busquets would only be helpful. But yeah, it honestly remains to be seen. July 5th is when even honestly even the first week of July we're at the end of June. The first week of July we'll probably see a lot of movement. Yeah, what was it? Next week Wednesday is when the transfer window opens. So I think within these next couple of days, we're probably just going to see a lot of movement. Miami, despite the Messi saga, as of late, their transfers have been very low key and to the point. I remember Dixon Arroyo. We didn't hear about him joining the roster until what he like 2 days before he signed. So I think with Miami, they're going to move pretty quickly to get the players that Tata needs to kind of stop the bleeding right now. And yeah, the capology of all of this is so intricate, and I'm in favor of just simplifying a little bit. But as I've started covering, I've gotten a hang of it a little bit more on my own time. So yeah, I'm in. I think we're both going to be really interested to see how they maneuver around this. But yeah, that Campana decision, I yeah, do they buy them down and lose those spots? I think those spots would be helpful for this current roster, but yeah, let's see. And then, like you said, Emerson Rodriguez off on loan. Do they make that permanent? So there's just a lot of situations up in the air, and I'm really intrigued to see how they go about this.
So here's what I meant. I'll speak to the Campana thing first, and then I want to get to more in depth in the designated player conversation. But the Campana thing for me solves itself after this year. You can make it work where you only lose it for the remainder of this season, and if you're not going to bring in these younger guys, then you can figure it out. That if Campana returns as a young designated player next season, you get those slots back. You're also not under the same restrictions from the sanctions are gone. So you have more flexibility in 2024 than you would in 2023. My question is, if it is another high profile guy, reportedly Busquets is going to make around $10 million, right? There's no possibility to buy him down from there. If you talk about some of the names that have been floated around, and just for hypothetical purposes, I'll mention them, but the likes of a Jordi Alba or an Angel De Maria, right? Not saying that those are likely or even on the verge of happening, but
Mm.
if those are the ones that are coming in, is there any wiggle room to be able to buy one of them down? Or not, right? That would be how you solve it. If one of them comes in at $1.5 million, is that a stretch? Is that pushing it? That's when you're talking about capology for that third designated player spot. I think that's where it's going to come in handy, and that's why I brought up when I was having the one question that we all got. That's why I asked about the academy, because that prioritizes the academy even more. If you're going to have three guys that are each making $10 million plus, you are forced to round out that roster with homegrown generation Adidas players, academy players, and things like that. To bring it back to Pizarro, though, because I don't want to forget about it, I'm looking through, and there's very few teams that even could take him on in a designated player role. Red Bulls is one of them. Nashville has an open spot. LAFC is an interesting one. If they could make it possibly work, I don't know what you're getting in return there. FC Dallas, another interesting possible one if he could find a spot there. But outside of that, maybe the Crew, maybe Atlanta has a spot. But those are very there's not a lot of places where Rodolfo Pizarro being moved intra-league within MLS, where that even looks possible. It almost looks like they need to search for a full transfer partner, and needing to do that when teams know that you need to unload him, you know, it lends itself more to just waiting for them to buy him out than it does selling and getting a transfer fee. I guess just logically, right?
Yeah, and I think there has to be some team, maybe a mid-table La Liga side or a Liga MX side that could use him. Honestly, I think Pizarro didn't work out for Inter Miami, but he still has an interesting, excuse me, a particular skill set. He's very good at just holding onto the ball retention. He's a skillful dribbler, and I'm sure there are some teams that could use that on their team right now. So it's just a matter of finding the right fit for him, so he can continue his career. I know my Inter Miami prides himself on sending their players to good situations. Look at Julian Carranza, Lewis Morgan, even Christian McCoon, who first went to Charlotte and now he's with the New England Revolution and doing well with them. Inter Miami will find a good spot for Pizarro when he leaves because Busquets being a DP, someone needs to leave with the current DP situation. So obviously Pizarro is the one that we're all looking at. So yeah, he'll be in a good spot. And yeah, I don't know what MLS team could use him, but you literally never know. Like the Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter trade to CF Montreal that came out of nowhere, and oh, we didn't even mention the 1.3 million in GAM that they have to use too. So
Well, I think that they've used it
there we
with
go.
Gregory and with Carranza. I think that
Okay.
that just,
Yeah,
if you look up their salaries, they almost like specifically come up to 1.3 million. So if you just did that, then they basically cost nothing now. Their cap room is zero. They're two people against your 20-man roster, which is very helpful. And so you're not going to specifically do that, but if you basically just say the 1.3 million that they got for Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter plus Kamal Miller, that is a net wash for Campana and for Gregory. I think that those
yeah.
things pretty much line up. I do want to talk about a couple of other, I guess, personnel things that were announced with Tata being announced. That his one of his assistants, Jorge Thieler, who was an assistant with him with the Mexico national team, also at Atlanta, will be joining him, as well as fitness coach Rodolfo Palladini and Jose Manuel Alfaro, video analyst Damian Silvero. All of them are still awaiting visas to be able to join the team. But as I mentioned earlier today, interim head coach Javier Morales will be remaining with the club as an assistant coach for Tata Martino, and goalkeeper coach Seba Saha will also be staying as the goalkeeper coach as well. The other assistant under Phil Neville was Darren Powell, who you and I both know very well from being the Inter Miami 2 head coach previously. He was the assistant this year and was sort of the eyes and ears from above as the assistant looking down. He will be moving to a different role within the club, but maintaining a role within the club. Darren has done a lot of great things with the academy, with the second team in the past, so I would expect him to return there and really work on player development. That's a very strong suit of his. So that sort of rounds out Inter Miami's coaching staff moving forward. What's your impression of that with Jorge Thieler? I think I'm getting the last name right. Who was with him with Mexico? What was with him at Atlanta United? Played for Newell's Old Boys in Argentina. A guy that Tata knows very well. They're very similar in age. They grew up together through the ranks. So very comfortability within the staff that Tata is bringing around him, both for his own guys and for guys comfortable with the club.
I think the most, I keep using the word interesting, but it is interesting how they're bringing in a video analyst. I don't know if they had it on the previous staff. I know they had an analytics team, but video analysis will kind of help Inter Miami clean up some of the wonky things that they do on the pitch and just get them more tactically straight. So I'm pleased to see that. And yeah, a lot of it is, his crew, and most coaches, when they switch teams, they bring along their coaching staff with them. And it's not surprising, Ian. I know you reported something about maybe another Inter Miami coach being added on to that coaching staff. And yeah, I think there is just a good mix of MLS experience and obviously Tata bringing in his guys that he knows. And obviously you want a sense of comfortability with Messi and Busquets coming. You don't want them to take too long to adjust to the league. So Tata bringing in his core group of coaches will only help Inter Miami and the younger players on the roster as well as to help them just learn how to be more professional. I guess I'm not sitting knocking their professionalism, but like they're still young and just learning the ropes more than just learning to be professional. So hopefully I'm just intrigued to see how different the assistant coaches will tweak some things in the roster, and once they get that full squad set up, I'm curious to see how it all will fit in at the end. So yeah, I don't know. Assistant coaches, do they? I don't know because I remember under Phil Neville's staff, like he did bring on Darren Powell as the assistant coach, and we thought maybe the team will play more attacking soccer because with Darren Powell under Fort Lauderdale CF and Inter Miami CF2, they played really expansive soccer, but we didn't necessarily see that under Phil Neville. So I'm curious to see if Tata's assistant coaches will bring something different. But at the end of the day, Mark Tata is the head coach, so what he says goes. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see the changes and happy to see a video analyst on the coaching staff too.
Alex, it feels like every single week that you and I talk these days, we're spending the first entire half of the show about the future after post, July 20th and whatever. But there are still games that are going on. Inter Miami falling this past weekend at Philadelphia 4-1 in a game that I don't think was particularly competitive and frankly a little frustrating. Let's start there as we look towards that game where Miami stands in the standings and also to the two games, both one that they'll have this weekend and the one against Columbus on July 4th. Let's go back to Philadelphia and what went wrong there. It seemed to be another one of those games where Miami in the first 20, 30 minutes had 60 plus possession and didn't really do anything with it and even found themselves down a couple goals. And it's just odd to see this team time and time again say that they want the ball, and be able to accomplish that, but not be able to do anything with it and find themselves trailing when they are playing that game. They are almost better at playing that counterattacking style that you've called for countless times, and that's where they look to be having more joy in their play.
Yeah, and I think that that Union game was so the first 20 minutes they had a lot of the ball, and there were a lot of lots of movements between the two tens, which were Pizarro and after we look at the lineup, but Pizarro started and David Ruiz was in the midfield as well. Hold on, let me pull up the starting 11 real quick to get a
Benha. It
sense.
was Benha, Pizarro and Benha.
Benha and Pizarro. There we
Yeah.
go. So the two tens, Benha and Kramashki, excuse me, Pizarro and Kramashki, they did their best, to kind of play off of Martinez, but I don't think it quite works when I don't know. It just felt just disjointed. They try to be compact at the back, but they had Noah Allen, who was a natural left back, playing as a center back, and while he did okay, I think I saw what Javi was trying to do. Have Franco Negri overlap and Noah Allen when he gets his chances to go forward. Go forward. So they have two kind of. Pizarro cuts in on that. On he was lined up on the left hand side, so Pizarro cuts in. Franco Negri is that wide player, and then Noah Allen can be kind of that backup option, also overlapping. And then behind them, they had Ian Frey and McVeigh. But the second line of the midfield involving Taylor, David Ruiz, Arroyo, Negri, it felt disconnected from the back line. And so many times the Union were able to just kind of pull Miami apart and strike in transition. And that's where their downfall was. And I think I mentioned it on the pod before. That was my biggest worry. Miami just giving up goals in transition. And yeah, that's exactly what happened. The Union put 3 goals past him. That last one was an own goal from Ruiz, but yeah, it was just an ugly game. But Taylor got a goal back in the 50th minute. But yeah, my biggest fear happened. They got stretched in transition. The two, they were not communicating well, and it showed. Benha and Pizarro tried their best to kind of get the offense going, but maybe this would have worked better had they had Campana, bullying the two center backs and Jack Elliott and Jacob Glesnes instead of Martinez trying to make runs in behind because physicality wise they're not they're not gonna. He wasn't gonna beat the two of them. One of them's like 6'4" in the air. So I thought that personnel decision was a bit strange, but overall, the first 25 minutes were okay. They were controlling the ball and maybe getting into the opponent's final third quite a bit, but they had no real penetration in that penalty area, and they couldn't score. And the Union will hurt you in transition, and that's exactly what they did. So yeah, it was a just a messy game all around, and yeah, no words really. It's the bleeding continues, and Austin FC. They've their next game against Austin FC. They've kind of rebounded a little bit more. So is also going to be a difficult game at home. So let's see how that goes on. Really.
Yeah, it's tough to see the situation they're in defensively, right? Especially because this team has proven time and time again that it just frankly isn't very good offensively right now. But when they've found success, it's because that defense has held firm. They're decimated right now. They have no Gregory, no Jean Mota in the midfield. DeAndre Yedlin is out for the Gold Cup. Kamal Miller is gone for the Gold Cup with Canada as well. Sergei Kristov was not available because of visa issues returning from the Euro qualifiers. Ryan Saylor is still out. And now Franco Negri is done for the year with an ACL injury that he suffered in the 38th minute. So just defensively, the team has very, very thin options to look at for what they're able to do. And I just wonder, with the excitement of Messi coming in and Busquets coming in, I mean, how how much defense are you going to need, or how much defense are you going to have to be able to make any of this work in a system? Tata Martino very very often likes four at the back, and I just don't know if right now the personnel is able to be there. Noah Allen, I would assume, is your starting left back for the remainder of the year. But even he's coming off injury that he missed the first couple months of the season. So is he full to go? Week in and week out right now. There's Ian Frey, who went 77 minutes against Philadelphia, is coming off missing in the first years of his career because of ACL injuries. So in defense right now, they just are extremely thin. And with a team like Austin FC that in back-to-back games have done 3-0 thumpings of their opponent, have league MVPs or quality MVP in Sebastian Driussi, Daniel Pereira, who can hurt you in many different ways. A lot of talent on Austin FC. I know that they've struggled. They're mid-table in the West this year, but that was the number 2 team. That was LAFC's basically biggest challenge outside of Philadelphia last year. That I think that this Austin FC team, if you are not healthy, which Inter Miami is not at the back, a team like Austin FC is a tough one to go up against.
Yep. Juicy. Like you said, Diego Fagundes, Danny Pereira. They have Rigoni. Tons of players that can hurt you. Yeah, that's just tons of players that can hurt Inter Miami if they play their cards wrong. And hopefully, Miami will be playing at home, so maybe that gives them a little boost. But still, they have tons of players that can hurt them, and I'm just struggling to find words because this Miami team in its current state, they don't look too good. So and Austin, like you said, are coming off back to back 3-0 wins, and they're starting to finally get it together after struggling earlier in the season. So yeah, I don't know how Javi Morales will go about this. Campana, last game for Campana barely got any minutes, so I expect him to start this one. Let's see how it goes. For Miami's sake, I'm hoping they can just grind out a draw because to stop the bleeding. But this Austin team is quite solid, and they've got almost all stars throughout the team, and it'll be difficult, but not impossible. That Miami will be at home, and hopefully that will give them a little bit more of a boost. With the fans there and the comfortability of playing in that stadium.
7 straight MLS losses for Inter Miami. That is a club record. They've never gotten this far. 6 several times, but never into the 7th. They have 17 goals this season. That's fewest in the Eastern Conference, 28 goals allowed. That is third most in the Eastern Conference. Their minus 11 is the worst in the Eastern Conference. And I look to these 2 games against Austin and, again, against Columbus. and they're so important. You're right now. You are 11 points out of the playoffs, but you have 2 games in hand. So net, if you take these and you think that you're going to play that well against Messi, then these 2 games, I really think at least 4 points you have to get just to be able to close that gap. You have a lot of road games after that, and so these 2 games to be able to get points just to maintain striking distance for me are so important. If you had to find someone who's going to propel this team back into competitive play, where are you starting to look? Because it didn't look great against New England. They had 2 weeks off. You thought maybe returning it would look a little better, and it looked worse. So where are you turning to? Robert Taylor had a great game, I thought, against Philadelphia. Benha had a pretty good game against Philly. I thought David Ruiz was okay
Yeah,
until
he
the
got an
own goal.
assist.
Sorry, I missed what you said there.
He got an assist,
Yeah, yeah.
Kamashki.
So
Mm.
I thought that there are certain bright spots, but you need someone. It can't just be the young guys. Someone needs to propel this team into competitiveness. So where are you looking this weekend?
Good question. I'll say maybe a Robert Taylor. Honestly, I think it's the midfield. They're so broken down without Mata and Gregory. Obviously, before that, Neville's tactics were, they probably could have been better, but with Mata and Gregory out, it just they had no platform to build off of offensively. And earlier this morning we saw the club tweeted out a video of Gregory actually back on the field. He's not doing ball work, but he's running and like jogging. So hopefully he will be back before the end of the season. But who needs to step up? I don't know if the midfield plays poorly. I think it's going to be very one sided. Against Austin, but maybe yeah, I'll say Robert Taylor, maybe Stefanelli, with Coco Jean out and now Franco Negri, both of them out with ACL injuries. No Allen will step up. Stefanelli will probably get some minutes. Robert Taylor as well. Campana, like I mentioned earlier, he didn't start against the Union. So I expect him to maybe start, hopefully. And yeah, someone needs to step up. And, maybe it is Leo Campana. Maybe that's his, uh, that'll be his
You'd like
game.
it to
And,
be,
and,
right?
and
I mean, you'd like it to
yeah,
be.
hopefully. But
But
yeah, they definitely need to get it together and just get something flowing.
yeah, Dixon Arroyo is another name potentially, I guess, with all that's missing in the back there. Briefly, Alex, before we go, I do want to touch on Columbus because that game is next Tuesday, July 4th, special July 4th game for Inter Miami this year at home. Last year was at Dallas. This year they get Columbus at home, and the rare chance, Inter Miami, if you ever get a chance to go into the locker room, not in the stadium but in the clubhouse as well, they have a board in the training facility that shows every single home and away opponent or every opponent that they play over the course of the year and their results against them, and if they won the season series or not against them. Columbus is the rare one this year that they're going to have the opportunity to do it with, both because they play them twice and because Columbus is the only team that Miami has beaten on the road this year, a 2-1 win earlier
Mhm.
this season. So this is the first time that Miami will have a chance to get a 6-pointer against one of their Eastern Conference rivals this year, and perhaps their only chance given the state of affairs right now. So looking into this game, and I mentioned how important these 2 games are going to be, getting at least 4 points. I really think that if they're going to have any chance of being in striking distance, come when Messi arrives and not just rely on the U.S. Open Cup and the Leagues Cup, this Columbus Crew game winds up becoming even more important depending on what happens this weekend against Austin. With 2 games in 4 days, this team is used to that. They played 8 games in 25 days in the month of May, so they're used to schedule congestion. But how do you prepare for these 2 games in 4 days, knowing the importance of them for your MLS campaign?
I think they just kind of go for it. I don't think they think about the schedule. Or, at this point, all their most of their players are out with injury, so they, next player up, and I think they're just going to go for it. You kind of have to at this point, and They're kind of fighting for their lives, in that sense, and they're second to last in the wooden spoon race, and in any Inter Miami season, they haven't finished last in the league. So definitely some motivation to climb up into the playoff spots and whatnot. So yeah, they're just gonna have to go for it. Everyone's gonna have to go and do their best, and like you take it one game at a time. Against Austin this weekend, maybe grind out a draw or maybe get that win. Something needs to happen, but right now they're not in a good spot, and yes, players are injured, but at the end of the day, you just need to play ugly and win, before Messi, Busquets, Tata, actually come here, and they get their visas and they finally get settled. They have to play ugly and win and just stop the bleeding right now, because that's the most important thing.
Let's talk about what went right in that Columbus game earlier this season. Obviously, you're missing three starters from that game. Negri, Mota, and Coco Jean will be out. You're also missing another two starters in Yedlin and Kamal Miller, who are gone for the Gold Cup. But Sergi started that game. Dixon Arroyo, that was one of his first games for the club. Benha, Stefanelli, and Campana up top. That was the brace that Campana scored. And one of the games that he looked pretty good against Columbus's back three. That was probably Campana's best game that he's played this season. You had mentioned that you think that he starts against Austin. Are you going with two? It's a tired conversation, I know, but how are you managing this? Javi has not gone with two strikers in a single time yet, really outside of substitutions at a necessity. I think the only time he did was against New England late in the game there. But how are you managing this game to get those opportunities that you were able to really attack that back three that Columbus tried the last time, that I think was very successful for Miami to find spaces in behind, but especially those wide crosses. That was really the difference. I go back to Campana's first goal in that game, and that was what was working for them against Columbus the first time. Was they were able to find the spaces to make those crosses, and they were, I don't love those crosses because they're low percentage if you look at the totality of them, but they were high percentage for that single game in that small sample size there. That was what worked for them to beat Columbus the first time out.
Yeah, and I think that tactically Javi's going to do something different. I think he'll probably go with one striker, maybe Joseph on the bench, and they'll play that same old 4-2. Actually, I don't know. I think he
He's
just
going with a
wants.
4-2-3-1 pretty much consistently.
Yeah, but that back three wasn't too successful against the Union, but I think against Columbus it'll probably be more fitting, with their back three as well, and just numerically match them up. But I hate to make these calls because you never know until you actually get to game day, So I do think that maybe he will revert back to the flat back. I think he'll go with the back three because unless Harvey Neville starts at right back, I don't necessarily trust Noah Allen as a center back, but as a fullback, yes, going forward, and obviously he will be starting now. But yeah, I know it's hard to tell. Does he go two up top? Will he go with the two number 10s again? It's difficult to say, but I do think that whatever happens, maybe they have to match up numerically against Columbus and kind of stymie that midfield. I know Aiden Morris is with the U.S. men's national team, so he won't be there. So that's one less midfielder to worry about. Darlington Nagby will be there, which will be the tough deal for Inter Miami. He's kind of unpressable, but yeah, I think this would have worked had Yedlin been in with Inter Miami instead of with the U.S. But I think against the Crew in that back three, you have to match them up numerically and kind of not necessarily man mark, but kind of stymie their most their deadliest players. So kind of pin their excuse me their wing backs back and making sure they're not getting these overlapping runs and getting crosses in, because I think once Miami get into that stretch transition game where other teams are allowed to get in it and cross, that's difficult for them. So I do think back three just to numerically match up with the Crew, but I don't think Javi will go with two strikers. I think he'll Ben Kromashki will start again. Stefanelli will probably start, and then maybe things will switch second half and 60th minute. Maybe he'll bring in some subs, but yeah, I think back three you start, and then if the game is going the way you want, maybe you can go attack and switch to a flat back four, and and pour more numbers forward.
Austin FC Saturday from Drive Pink Stadium at 7:30. Austin currently 8th in the Eastern Conference on 25 points through 19 played. Tuesday, July 4th will be Columbus 7:30 as well from Drive Pink Stadium. Columbus currently is 5th in the Eastern Conference, 31 points on 19 played, but neither of them pretty good away from home. Austin 2-1-5, a -9 goal differential this season away from Austin, Texas, and Columbus away from home has been 2-2-5 with a -8 goal differential. So definitely opportunity there for Inter Miami to get some points that they haven't gotten in the better part, well, in 7 games, 7-game losing streak for Inter Miami in MLS play. Alex, before we go, I want to touch on MLS All-Star real quick. The All-Star team announced, you and I both voted in that, and no Inter Miami players were selected to the All-Star game. I don't know if you had any. I don't think you had any in your ballot. I had Drake Callender in mine, and I actually think that he probably would have been chosen if not for the way that sort of these things that go in terms of coaches' picks. Wayne Rooney got a bunch of picks. Don Garber gets a bunch of picks. The commissioner. So Roman Berkey of St. Louis was voted in. He was the top vote getter for goalkeepers. But the other two goalkeepers, Jordy Petrovic of New England, was a coach's selection by Wayne Rooney, but also Tyler Miller. That, if you want to call a snub there, Tyler Miller, DC United's goalkeeper, gets the nod as a coach's selection by Wayne Rooney to go to the All-Star game, perhaps most likely at the expense of Drake Callender to be an All-Star. Miami with no All-Stars on this roster that will play in DC against Arsenal coming up later this summer. What were your thoughts on that? If you thought Drake deserved it, or if anybody did, and your ballot compared to what the final result was?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about if we're or if Drake Callender wasn't voted in or he wasn't a coach's pick. It's weird how guys like Ricky Puig, who was playing for nearly the last place LA Galaxy, gets in despite the team. He could have good individual stats, but the team has been playing pretty poorly. But he gets in. But a little confused how Drake doesn't when it's kind of similar situations. I know Ricky Puig is a bigger name, but still, I think if Puig can get in, then absolutely Callender should have gotten a coach's pick. Another confusing not selected is Carlos Hill of the New England Revolution. He's been having a really good year, but he was not selected in, nor was he a commissioner or a coach's pick either. Um, Selections that I do like, obviously Jose Martinez from the Union, coach's pick. Christian Espinoza for the San Jose Earthquakes. He's been having a good year. Good for him. Benteke, he's been having a good year. I believe he was voted in. He was a coach's pick from Wayne Rooney, his own coach. So there's no conflict of interest there. Um,
Well, it's
yeah,
interesting
I
to
don't know.
hear Bruce Arena had very, very interesting comments on Carlos Hill not being selected, and he's right to say that how could,
Yeah, I
I
agree
mean,
with him.
Carlos Hill is probably, I mean, he's not going to win MVP, but he's top 5, top 8 probably, and he's not
Yeah,
making the All Star game. That was a little confusing. You're right. There were some that I did like. Alvaro Barreal from Cincinnati voted in, was very nice. I liked Jesus Ferreira, who just came off the hat trick yesterday in the Gold Cup, getting voted in. It's about time that he did. But also, I give it to Don Garber because picking Kai Kamara as one of his two commissioner picks after the journeyman goal scorer that he is was really a nice touch. And I hope that Kai gets some valuable minutes in this game. He's going to end up being an MLS legend at the end of his career. So, and he's having
yeah,
a great season for Chicago.
yeah. He is. Sorry, I didn't have anything much to add on there, but he's every time he plays Miami, he's always scoring goals on them, and yeah, it's just a consistent goal scorer, and happy to see him get some recognition finally.
There's a lot going on, Alex. I feel like we could talk forever each and every week, but we'll wrap there. Inter Miami introducing Tata Martino as its next head coach and bringing on his assistants as well. He'll take over sometime, we expect, within the next week or so, as Javi Morales, the interim head coach, will wrap up his final couple games before returning to an assistant role with the club. It will be Austin FC this Saturday at Dry Pink Stadium at 7:30, followed by Columbus Crew on Tuesday, July 4th, 7:30 from Dry Pink Stadium. Make sure you follow the Heron Outlet wherever you get your podcast, or if you're watching here on YouTube, subscribe, like, share, give us a comment. Let's continue the conversation. Follow us on Twitter or on Instagram or on our Substack. You can subscribe to our Substack, get all the latest. Alex is going to have a great article coming up later as well with our Substack. You can get all very interesting, unique content on our Substack, theheronoutlet.substack.com. You can also follow us on our socials, on Twitch, on TikTok, and a bunch of other places. The Heron Outlet, your number one source for Inter Miami, to have you covered as we enter this new era of the Herons and their play. That'll do it for us this week. For Alex Winley, I am Ian Heston. For our producer Andres, this is the Heron Outlet, and we'll see you back here this time next week.